The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So we don't have too many days like this on the sports calendar. The Nats and the Orioles both off last night. The NBA Finals don't start until Thursday. The Stanley Cup Finals don't start until tomorrow night. And by the way, that is Florida and Edmonton. If you haven't been paying attention since the Caps bowed out, that's a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup Finals. So, follow up on events that happened last night. Not a hell of a lot to talk about, but I did pull some interesting conversation that was done both on the Dan Patrick Show and a podcast that is co-hosted by Alex Rodriguez and a former Bloomberg reporter, Jason Kelly. It's called The Deal. And Josh Harris said some really interesting things about his ownership, about how he got into it, first owning the Philadelphia 76ers. And at one point in this conversation, and it seems like for most people who own teams or own businesses, the key to success is hiring the right people. And Josh Harris says what you have to do is you have to hire a really good general manager who hires a really good coach and then hire a really good team president. Seems like a pretty simple thing. But, it didn't happen that way for 24 years. We watched what was going on with the Dan Snyder regime, and you shake your head every year, and here comes a billionaire who's been successful on a variety of fronts, not as much as an owner, more successful than Dan Snyder, obviously, but Philadelphia, the 76ers, and the New Jersey Devils hockey team, they haven't won championships yet under his ownership. And the Commanders took a giant leap forward in his second year, getting to the NFC Championship game. But the formula is quite simple. You hire really good people to do their jobs. You keep an eye on what they're doing, but you let them do their jobs, and you get involved in the big decisions. And he lays all that out in this podcast, and we'll play some of the highlights of that coming up at 10 o'clock. Meantime, Charles Barkley showing up on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. And this is about 6 minutes I'm going to play here first. And it's kind of an Abbott and Costello routine. It really is. Because Barkley has worked for the last 25 years for Turner Sports. And it's pretty well laid out what he does. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but he does really well with it. He's probably the most compelling person on sports television these days. Makes over $20 million a year. And what he does is that NBA show, Inside the NBA, which is pre and post for, I think it's only one game a week during the regular season. Then we get to the postseason. They work every day. And then the NCAA tournament for 3 weeks. They work 4 days, right? Thursday through Sunday. And that's pretty much it. That's a pretty good job if you can get it. And now TNT is out of the NBA business. And the deal that they have for Inside the NBA is still going to be with Turner, but the show is going to be on ESPN. Yes, it is confusing, and this is just an example of how confusing it is, as Barkley discussed with Dan Patrick yesterday how his new deal is going to work.
I said I'd work for 2 more years, and that's what I agreed to. And I'm going to have to trust him. But listen, if they start trying to work me too much between ESPN and TNT, I'm just gonna walk on home. Because listen, I actually have 7 years left on my contract. I'm like, there's no way I'm working 7 years. I said, I'm gonna be a good soldier for Kenny, Ernie, and Shaq, and the people I work with, because I love the people I work with, especially behind the scenes. I said, but the best I can do is 2 years, and the other 5 years, they got no chance of happening. So I said, you know what? I gave y'all 2 years. They're like, can we get 3? I said, I just told you I'm going to give you 2. Hey, Dad, it was so fun. I said, I'll give you 2 years. Can we get 3? I said, I just told you I was going to give you 2.
Welcome to the ESPN way of life, though.
This is the TNT people. Because I think my contract technically is still with TNT.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm going to be a good soldier.
What was that feeling like last show?
Well, I was fine until Ernie started getting emotional, and then I started tearing up, and I'm glad they only had the camera on him. Because Kenny and Shaq, they were just talking. I was like, okay, did, but Ernie was emotional. The crowd was great. But like I say, man, I've been with these people for 25 years. It's a great thing. The NBA family has been tremendous to us. The fans have been tremendous for us. But I will admit, I'm looking forward. ESPN is the most famous sports brand ever, and it's going to be it's going to be awesome working for them. And nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, I think that's the only thing that, like, what are we actually going to do? So I think that's the only thing. But like I say, I did not want to leave people out in the cold. So I said, hey, you know what? Let me do it for a couple of years, and then y'all can have it.
Okay, but does the show look like the show? It's inside the NBA, but it's on ESPN. Is that how you're positioning this?
Dan, we don't even know.
Okay, all right.
That's one of the reasons I was waiting. Like, yeah, I don't know what we're doing, and then TNT is trying to do something stupid behind the scenes. We taped the pilot about a month ago. And it was the stupidest I've ever seen in my life. Because we're not going to be on ESPN as much as people think.
Wait, what do you mean you taped a pilot?
Well, because ESPN, because we're only probably going to be working for ESPN like half the time to 1/3 of the time. So I think TNT wants to do something. And we taped a pilot about a month ago, and it was the stupidest ever.
Okay, so you're still going to do a show, an NBA show on TNT, and you're going to do a show on ESPN.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But like I say, if they're being honest, we're going to probably work on ESPN 1/3 or half the time. But they're trying to do something stupid at TNT. Which is number one, it's a stupid idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, we won't have basketball highlights, but also we're probably going to be going up against an NBA game, and anybody who likes basketball ain't gonna say, hey, you know what? Let me turn off an NBA game that's on Amazon, ESPN, or NBC to go watch these four dudes sit around and talk about nothing. So it's complicated. And like I say, we taped a pilot doing stupid stuff, and it was just stupid stuff. And I wouldn't want to go out like that.
Okay, is this like a second screen or a Manning like, what are we doing here?
Dan, you don't know what the heck. Hey, they don't know. Listen.
Oh, my God.
I'm telling you, Dan, it was interesting. We were sitting there taping it. Well, I will admit one thing. I give TNT credit. They did say it was awful pilot. So
okay.
At least,
they were honest with you.
They were honest. They were honest. Because it was like, so they want to do something. But like I say, the problem we're going to be going up because they're going to be probably there's going to be an NBA game on every night. So whenever we do it, it's going to be up against an NBA game. So that's the first problem. So, but I guess they want to feel like they're doing something to make us earn our money from TNT.
Charles Barkley joining us inside the NBA on TNT. Is it going to, okay, what's the show called on TNT? And what's the show called on ESPN?
Man, first of all, I guess inside the NBA, I think, and I guess it's going to be just inside the NBA on ESPN, ABC. I think that's easy.
Okay.
But I think I think the pilot's called Inside the NBA.
That's not confusing.
Well, you know the thing that was hilarious about it, Dan? We didn't have any NBA. Cause,
you have no rights to the NBA, but you're inside the NBA.
That's right. We can't show highlights. We can't show highlights. So
oh no,
we were sitting there for like an hour and a half taping this pilot, and we were looking at each other. What the hell are we doing? But like I say, I give TNT credit. The first thing they said after the pilot, yeah, that was really stupid. We got to figure something out.
So let's see if we can understand this. The award-winning show, which has put those guys in the Hall of Fame, that would be Barkley, Kenny Anderson, and then Shaq and Ernie. They are all going to be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, Kenny Smith, excuse me, I confused him with Kenny Anderson. Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley, Shaq, and Ernie Johnson, all in the Hall of Fame because of a show on TNT called Inside the NBA. It will still be called Inside the NBA. It will still be produced in the Turner Studios, but it will be shown on ESPN. Also, as part of the deal with Turner, because Turner's paying some of the freight here on salaries, including Barkley's $21 million a year, they're also going to do a show called Inside the NBA. The problem is, and it's going to be on TNT, the problem is they can't use any NBA highlights. So they got to figure this whole thing out. They really do. But it's just funny to listen to him try and explain something that is very much up in the air right now. You'd think that when you sign people to those kind of contracts, you'd have things ironed out, but apparently they don't. Here's more from Barkley. This is on modern players, kind of a get-off-your-lawn speech, but I think most of us are aligned with it.
Man, bless these guys as long as they appreciate how lucky they are and don't think they're making all that money because they're great players. They were just born at the right time. We got a bunch of great players, but, man, these guys, I just hope they appreciate how lucky they are and stop this BS with load management. We can't keep crapping on the fans where we're like, you're making $70 million. You can't play basketball 4 days a week. You can't work 2 days in a row. And you want doctors and nurses and firemen and cops and people in the military and people who got work in the cement factory. Wait a minute. I make $20 an hour. This dude makes $70 million and he can't play back to back. Come on, man. I think that's an insult to the fans. And it might be a problem. Well, it's already a problem. But when this money double and triple, the fans gonna are yeah, I'm not watching this crap anymore if these dudes can't play 2 games in a row. Can you imagine you're a fan and you get a great player who comes west to east or east to west? He's only coming 1 time a year, and the tickets are ridiculous. And you're yeah, he played last night. So I think there's some things we got to answer as basketball players going forward.
Yeah, but you're making whatever, $20 million a year, and you only want to work 2 days a week.
I show up every day, though. Hey, listen, I show up every day, Dan.
Okay. Back to back, though?
Back to back. Wait, during the playoffs, we work 6 days a week, and I show up every day for those 6 days. Hey, Dan, you know what? These guys,
I apologize. I didn't realize the work schedule, the workload you have. My bad.
Dan, I'm so old, we flew commercial and played back to back. And these guys got the best private planes. They got the best medical staff. They got these cold water plunges. They got these hyperbaric chambers. I mean, they got the best shoes. And they can't play basketball 2 days in a row for $50-60 million. That's the craziest stuff ever, man.
Yeah, this thing about planes, it's funny. I was told yesterday, just found this out, that when Michael Jordan came to the Wizards, not as an executive where he was desk Jordan for a year and a half, but when he was a player the last 2 years with the team, he made sure they got a new plane. He didn't like the old plane that they had, even though it was a charter plane. Now, what Barkley's saying, I remember this, and I remember this when I was doing SMU basketball in the early 80s, that we were in the airport in Philadelphia getting ready to fly back to Dallas, I believe, or maybe we were going to Alabama, I forget. But I saw the Atlanta Hawks walking through the airport at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And when you do college basketball, you only make a few plane trips a year, especially those days in the Southwest Conference where most of the teams were, driving distance in Texas. And I just thought, my God, how do these guys do this day after day after day, flying commercial, schlepping through the airport? It was a different world. And now, they get on the plane shortly after the game is over. The plane drops them off in the parking lot, essentially where their cars are, and they go home. So, yeah, I buy what Barkley's selling there. Last part, this is a good story. This is about how he wore Air Jordan shoes, but only briefly. But it's an insight into Michael Jordan and the shoe industry. Now, Barkley and Jordan are no longer friends. Jordan has not spoken to him because Barkley had the audacity to criticize him when he was running the Charlotte Hornets, owning the Charlotte Hornets, and he said, you got too many people around you who are yes men. You got to get people who disagree with you, and Jordan didn't like that, and they haven't spoken. But they were the best of friends at one time, and Ahmad Rashad was kind of in the inner circle. So this is a story of Jordan and shoes and Barkley and Jordan's retirement. I'm assuming this is the first one. This is the one that shocked everybody after the 1993 season, and Barkley telling the story of Jordan and the shoes.
We went out smoking cigars the last time. The Mar that flew down, he said, I got something to tell you guys. He flew down to Houston, and he takes us out. We go out to dinner. We go out to smoke some cigars. He says, guys, I'm just giving y'all a heads up. I'm going to retire at the end of the season. I'm like, what? And me and Ahmad was like, I think he's serious. He said, yeah, I'm going to retire at the end of the season. So I called him like a week later. And I said, yo, man, that was a tribute. Because, remember when Magic Johnson announced he had AIDS? I wanted to pay homage to him. I called Billy Cunningham and said, hey, can I wear your jersey to celebrate Magic Johnson? He said, sure, no problem. I said, and I called Urban. I said, hey, man, for everything you did for me and my family, I'm going to wear number 32 all year. So I wore 32 one year. But I called Michael, and I said, hey, send me a pair of shoes. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate everything you did for me. Give me that advice on that Nike stock that made me $30 million. And
that wasn't insider trading, was it?
No, because at the time I was making about $3 million a year, and we were playing golf. And he said, Chuck, I was talking to somebody, so I want you to quit taking $3 million, take $1 million, and take the other $2 million in stock options. So I called my people, and they say, hey, Michael told me to do that, because Michael's always been a brilliant businessman, and they're like, this is risky. You think he's going to be that great? I says, man, I ain't never seen nobody like that dude. Because I had met him at the Olympic trials. I says, he's going to be amazing. He says, and we did it. And like I said, I ended up probably making, seriously, another $50 million, to be honest with you. But he made me trade that in. But the point I was making, man, I put his shoes on one game. He definitely did the greatest damn basketball player ever, Dan. Those were the heaviest damn things I've ever played in my life. I'm not even joking. Because when I designed my shoes, I wanted them really, really light. I played in those heavy-ass Air Jordans one game. It was like I had bricks on my damn feet, Dan. And I'm being 100% serious. I called him, man. I actually called him after the game. I said, yo, man, what the hell you be putting in these damn shoes? I mean, they were so damn heavy, Dan. I said, hey, I played in them one game as a tribute to him. These shoes too damn heavy for me, man. That's a true story, Dan.
It makes it even more amazing what Mike did in those Air Jordans.
Yeah, I said, you really are the damn goat. You playing these big-ass bricks.
Yeah, and look, that was the image of Jordan flying through the air. So flying through the air with heavy shoes. I guess if he wore lighter shoes, he might have been able to fly even better. But, yeah, he totally transformed the business. If you saw the movie Air, you know that. And also those commercials that he did with Spike Lee early in his career, the Mars Blackman spots, those were enormous, and changed the entire industry. And what you see now, you see people at weddings wearing Air Jordans. It's really an odd look to see somebody in like a $2,000 suit with a pair of sneakers on. It's like my mother wouldn't let me out of the house to get dressed up to go somewhere when I was a kid, and now it's stylish. And it all traces back to Michael Jordan, who became a billionaire off of this. Charles says he made an extra $50 million because Michael told him to buy some stock, which is obviously a very smart thing to do. John Thompson was also a big stockholder in Nike, and I imagine his heirs are doing quite well off of that. All right. Coming up in the next hour, Josh Harris with real insight on a podcast that he did called The Deal. And we'll get to that and much more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You know what is one of the most amazing events in sports? The U.S. Open golf tournament. We are going to have a 17-year-old high school kid in the field, while a 34-year-old six-time winner on the PGA Tour who's won $43 million is still trying to qualify and failed to yesterday, schlepping his own bag around the golf course. I mean, we're going to have the big names in golf participating for sure. I mean, maybe Scotty Scheffler wins another major. He's winning everything else. But the fact that a 17-year-old kid can qualify and the club pro and a guy who whacks it around the course on the weekend can make it makes this just an incredible event. I mean, that's really one of the undertold stories in sports about just how the field is put together at the U.S. Open. Is the 17-year-old kid going to win? No, he's not. But it's fun that it can happen in this way. It is truly an open event. It's called the U.S. Open, and I'll have more on that coming up later in the hour. I played part of a podcast that was done last week in Miami. It's called The Deal, and Alex Rodriguez is one of the hosts, as is Jason Kelly. Jason Kelly is a former business reporter with Bloomberg. It's mostly about money, people, but Josh Harris was on, and I pulled some parts of it, which I think give us a little bit more insight into who he is. Unlike Dan Snyder, he does talk to the media. He's done several news conferences since taking over as the owner. He's introduced the head coach and the general manager, and he's in and out day to day, but he's not, he doesn't do business the way Dan Snyder did. And so, we know that in those news conferences, he's not a great speaker. No, he's not. But he seems to be honest. He tells you, what his goals are. And just with the lunacy that went on here for 24 years, it's just so refreshing to hear somebody who's not only competent, but understands what it takes to run an organization. And you'll hear him say, there's three things that you have to do when you're an owner. Hire a really good general manager who hires a coach, and then hire a team president and let them do their jobs, which was something that Dan Snyder, I'm sure, was told over and over again. And at times he tried it on all three fronts, but he couldn't keep himself from putting himself into it, hopping off his yacht and telling him who to draft, including a quarterback who went to his kid's high school. I mean, it was crazy. So it's just so refreshing to listen to somebody who's been highly, highly successful in business, hasn't reached the level that he's wanted to as owner of the Philadelphia 76ers or the New Jersey Devils, but financially they've been a big success, and they have been playoff teams. And what we saw here was virtually a miracle with what happened from a 4-win team to a team that went to the NFC Championship with a really good general manager, a really good coach, and now they have a new team president, Mark Klaus, who I think is going to make a difference as well. He's going to be very much involved in the stadium and so forth, but I saw an interview that he did at the Economic Club, and seems to be night and day from Jason Wright, who just wasn't really up to the task. That really was something that he was in over his head on, and did a lot of really foolish things, like telling people that he'd increased the season ticket base by 180% when we could see the stadium was half full and the people that were there were rooting for the other team. So I think somebody now who comes from Campbell's Soup, big background, big business, and it is big business. I think they're going to be successful with him. So going back to the beginning, Josh Harris, as you know, grew up in Chevy Chase, grew up about a mile from where I grew up, right at the intersection of Beach Drive and East West Highway. Would have gone to Bethesda Chevy Chase, where I went to school. He's younger than I am, but would have gone with my sister, who went to junior high with him, Leland Junior High. She was a year behind him. And Mark Ein, they were really close friends. And it was Ein who put together Josh Harris with Mitch Rales, and that's what's helped to make this whole thing happen. But this goes back to Harris after he made his company Apollo public and decided that, let's pursue some childhood dreams here. And this is how he came to buy the Philadelphia 76ers.
It started off as an emotional thing. Apollo had gone public. I found myself, financially successful more than I had ever dreamed. And I had gone to Penn. My dad had gone to Penn. I knew a fellow, David Blitzer, from Penn. And the Sixers were part of a big entity that had the Flyers and the arena and a series of other arenas, and Ed Schneider was managing it. And his passion was the Flyers. He had started the Flyers, and the Flyers were doing great, and the Sixers were not doing as well for many, many years. And I lived through this thing, and it must have been indelibly in my memory. In 1982, the Washington football won the Super Bowl. Washington was a very divided city, both racially and socioeconomically. Everyone came out in the streets. One ticker tape parade, senior in high school. Go up to Penn as a freshman. I'm 17. I see Dr. J. Moses Malone, Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney win the NBA title, and they dominate the playoffs. And then Philly, which was also a very challenged city, tough economics, comes out in the streets. And for a moment in time, sports brought everyone together. And I noted that I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be an owner of both these teams. So I to have the opportunity to own both these teams, it's an amazing thing. But coming back to your question, when we bought the Sixers, they had less connection with the city, and that in teams, if you're connected with the city, if they think you're trying to win, if they think you're on their side, if you're doing things for the right reasons, generally the revenues follow, right? So at this point, the revenues were lagging. They were near the bottom in revenues. They were losing $50 million a year, and the NBA was in a lockout. And so they weren't even playing. And so we put together a group, and we sort of decided to zig when others were zagging. It was a little contrarian, and we said, look, we think that this team really matters. It's got a storied history. We think we can reconnect with Philly if we do the right things. And we, brought in a whole new we bought it at $280 million. It took 18 months. A lot of negotiations with Comcast, who were very good at their job. And it took 18 months. And I remember the Comcast team saying, we're going to schedule the arena. We do that, and you'll just get whatever. And we're like, nah. Why don't we have input into that? So there are a million issues like that. Wow. Just like little nuanced issues that really matter, because the days you get really matter. And then we reconnected with the city. We started to win basketball games. We started to improve the fan experience, the food, the driveway to driveway experience. And then now you fast forward to today, we're top quartile, top 5 in every major revenue category, and teams profitable. And then along the way, more importantly, the evolution of sports, right? It used to be that you watch sports on cable. With cable becoming streaming, people can watch sports all over the world. More people watch the Sixers, in many cases, in China or overseas than watch them in Philly. And so the value creation that's occurring at these leagues is obviously massive uplift in revenue, and that's creating massive growth in revenue, which is creating some profitability. I mean, each league is different, and obviously certain leagues are more profitable than others. But over time, it's allowing for the teams to invest and enhance their experiences. And what's happening in sports is garnering more and more attention. And more consumer focused, like live events. Right. And so the big 5 sports are now global media businesses.
And that's an important point, because that addresses the international aspect of this. And that's why the NBA was the first to really go in on this, and the NFL is doing this. We're going to have every Sunday games that start at 9:30 in the morning, international games, and go all the way to midnight. There's just not only the amount of revenue you can bring in, but the global marketing, and that's what these are. These are media businesses. The fan experience is great. And the fan experience, this is something to think about here. The fan experience Well, yes, there's money to be made, and tickets are expensive, and if you buy a luxury box, that's expensive. The food's expensive, the whole thing. But also, for the media standpoint of it, for people watching the games, it's a lot better if there's a big, loud, raucous crowd there than a half-empty stadium. I think that's one of the failings of the UFL is that they're playing these games in front of no fans, and you tune it in and you go, oh, what the hell is this? This doesn't work. But if you got a full, crazy stadium with fans going nuts, that means something too. But in many ways, they're like non-speaking parts in movies. Actors who are just stand-ins or stand-ons, things like that. So I think that's a really important point that he makes there. But that is how Josh Harris got involved in the sports ownership business, first with the Philadelphia 76ers, then buying the New Jersey Devils, and now, of course, owner of the Commanders. This is part two of this. This is Harris on when he bought the team. And remember, this deal came together in April of 2023. I made one of the big mistakes that I made in the radio business. I scheduled a trip out of town when the news became official that he had bought the team. It wasn't officially approved until July, but in April of 2023, it was a done deal. The Josh Harris Group had the team. But this is what he says about buying the team and how he really never expected to have the chance to do it.
I thought when I bought the Commanders that I was going to be outbid by Jeff Bezos, just to be very direct about it. It was rumored that he was interested, and obviously he doesn't, for me to put together a $5 billion equity account is much harder than for someone of his wealth to put together. He can just stroke a check and do it, right? So I thought I would lose, but it was a labor of love. I really felt it needed to happen, and God smiled, I guess, on me. But my point being that part of the valuation uplift is just the scarcity value. But I would say the second thing is that as revenues grow, cash flow will grow, right? So I think a good analogy is, beachfront real estate, where if teams are losing money, it'll limit the number of people that are willing to lose money consistently. If teams start to make money or make increasing amounts of money, then it draws in people. And I look at it as in the case of the NFL, which is the most profitable league right now, we think that, we're buying at a real cap rate of 3 to 4 going to 5 to 6. So even though that sounds like a very high EBITDA multiple, I look at it as like cash flow yield. And the NFL and the NBA and the NHL and all these leagues are incredible businesses. They're dominant in our culture. It's live entertainment. They're growing. There's lots of innovation. So I look at it as growth equity. And then most of the cash flow is guaranteed by massive media and technology companies, so that, it's almost like you get this yield and then you participate in the growth and the scarcity value evaluation. So, and if you look at it, the only thing that's done better than private equity, honestly, if you go back, is sports valuation. So I'll just throw out the NFL numbers. The Bills, $1.3 billion, $1.4 billion. The Panthers, 2.2, 2.3. Broncos in 2022, 4.6. Us at 6. And now, so that's 4x in 10 years. And now you start to hear about some of the things, and I think there'll be trades even higher than what you're saying. I think those are coming.
Yeah.
At
10 billion? You think 10?
I don't know. I think there could be stuff in the 9 to 10 range. I mean, it's all coming together. I think eventually, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think that, but I'm saying near term.
Yeah.
Literally. And that's only been, we bought the club coming up on 2 years ago, right? So I think you're going to.
So maybe you are a value investor after all.
Yeah, I think I'm a value investor in terms of a growth equity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think this is growth equity. I think it's also unique, and it's backstopped by media. And as long as you think people are going to want the content, and we have long-term media deals, and also it's very resilient economically, right? So certainly, if there's harder times, not as many people will come to the games or whatever, but the media payments are locked in. That's, the majority of the revenue. And even in harder times, people want something to celebrate. So I think these are fundamentally great businesses. They're also inflation resistant, right?
Yeah.
Like if inflation goes up. So when you talk about cap rates, 3 to 6 real cap rate, that's a reasonable, that'll be go up and down and be inflation resistant. So I think they're really good businesses, and I think they are actually interesting investments, and I think it will keep going up.
Now, the economic part of this is above my pay grade. But what he's pointing out is, he says 4X. That means that in 10 years, since the Buffalo Bills were sold for $1.5 million, it went 4 times, and now the Commanders selling for 6. I tell you the team to watch for. My cousin is a longtime season ticket holder for the Bears, over 40 years. He told me this. He said the McCaskey family, because Virginia McCaskey just passed away at the age of 102. So she was the last link to Papa Bear, George Halas, who founded the team. The inheritance taxes are insane, he says. So they're going to have to sell the team. Well, I'd imagine the Bears, now 2 years after the Commanders went for 6, and the way the media deals are going, are probably going to get close to 10, probably 8. If the last team sold for 6 a couple years after the previous team sold for 4, you're probably going to get 8, maybe 9. It's just insanity. The other thing that he said that's important is that the media deals are locked in. And actually, here's the crazy thing. As the tickets become more expensive, as the in-game experience becomes more expensive, the more people are going to be interested in watching it on television. And the media deals, as he says, are locked in. On top of that, they have an opener in 2029, which they are certainly going to open up, and they're going to probably double the money, and they keep spinning off stuff to make more money. Like last year when the Christmas Day was a Wednesday, you don't play football games on a Wednesday, but they did. They sold 2 of them for $100 million to Netflix, and there'll probably be more of those, because you're not only getting the national market, you're getting the international market. And each of those games drew 25 million people who had to have Netflix subscriptions to watch it. So it's a huge money business. He got in at the right time. And more importantly, he knows what he's doing, and he knows what winning means. And coming up, Josh Harris with the pretty simple formula of how to build a winning football team. And we will get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So how does a restaurant stay in business for 50 years? Well, location helps. Service helps. Most important thing, good food. Damn good food. And that's the Celebrity Deli, which has been in the same spot in Falls Church for 50 years, serving outstanding food. True, authentic, Jewish-style delicatessen. And there aren't many places around that can do this. Not around here. Not that could match some of the greats, like, the Carnegie Deli from back in the day, the Katz's Deli in New York City, the Rascal House, which I love to eat at in Miami. This is a deli on par with that. It's Celebrity Deli right there in Falls Church, and it has passed the ELISA test. My granddaughter Eliza, who loves matzo ball soup, she loves my sister's matzo ball soup. That, in my mind, that's the best homemade soup. But the best soup that you can get at a delicatessen, it's at Celebrity Deli. She'll tell you.
It's the best soup ever.
There you go. Take it from a not quite 3-year-old. It is the best soup ever, and it's served at Celebrity Deli. You can go in there for not only the matzo ball soup, but you can get a pastrami sandwich, the Reuben. They've got steak and cheese. They got great stuff there. Great food. And if you'd like to take it on the go, it makes it very easy. They have an online order at celebritydeli.com. That's deli with a Y, Celebrity Deli, DELLY. You can do it that way. Or if you're having a big party, whatever it is, some kind of a celebration, hey, do it for Father's Day. Check out Celebrity Deli and find their menu at their website, celebritydeli.com. Order up what you want, have it delivered, or pick it up and enjoy and take it from Eliza Canner.
It's the best soup ever.
That's Celebrity Deli. And again, you can find their website at celebritydeli.com. So back to more of the conversation that Josh Harris had on the Deal podcast, which is co-hosted by Alex Rodriguez, the former baseball great, and Jason Kelly, who's a former reporter, former business reporter with Bloomberg. We talked about how he got into the business. He did very well with his company, Apollo, when it went public. And as he said, got more wealth than he could have imagined. He bought the Philadelphia 76ers, and then that has transitioned him to become an owner with the Devils and now the Commanders. He says he still works 60 hours a week on his other business and 20 hours a week on his sports teams. He loves to work, works all the time, and clearly is very successful at what he does. But this is a seemingly simple primer for how to own a sports team, which Dan Snyder could really never get his head around. But here's Josh Harris's formula for owning a team.
First of all, when you run a sports team and you're an owner, your three most important jobs: hiring a GM, hiring a coach, hiring a president to run the business operations, and making them incredibly talented and like-minded in terms of values.
By the way, this owner is nodding right about that.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to be, ultimately, right, there's just 1,000 decisions that are made, and you should not want, I do not have the inclination, I don't want to be involved in all 1,000. I want to be involved in the most important decisions, and then I want people who have the same vision that I do, which is it's really a servant leader mindset, like do this on behalf of the city or on behalf of the players. So, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, obviously Mark Klaus from Campbell's is an amazing get for us. But then as far as specifically answering your question, the facilities that the players were showering in, playing in, weight training in. When we showed up, there wasn't even a game clock. Our bubble was deflating. And so we just literally said that, what you want to do is become a destination for players. Look, there's a relatively small amount of people who can play or coach or be in the front office of major sports. And so your job is to become a destination where they feel like they matter, you care about them, and the way that you articulate that is to create amazing facilities to make their lives easier. And so we've rebuilt everything from showers to locker rooms to weight facilities to food. And we really showed them that we cared about them, to how they travel. Think about it. If you have to travel all over the place and you're, and you're not staying in a nice hotel, or you're not traveling on a great plane, that's going to make a huge difference in your life. And so people think that the players, Alex, you were a player.
No, everything you're saying is spot on.
Yeah,
these are the things that really matter to us.
Right. Think about it. There were probably some owners where, you felt like, hey, my life is harder. And some owners where you felt like, hey, this guy really, or this person really cares about me. In addition to, obviously, each player wants to get compensated fairly, and that's all part of it. But a lot of great players, great players today can play wherever they want, right? Mm-hmm. So your job is to attract them and make them feel welcome, and that starts with with the front office and the coaching staff, but it also goes to their facilities. And so, we've spent $125 million across the stadium and the player facilities. And again, I think that you win in sports by invest. I don't think this is like it's a growth. As I said, I analogize it to growth equity. Cutting back stuff, skimping. I don't think that's right in sports. You're entertaining and you're attracting talent. So you've got to be like first class every step of the way. And that's why it improved. I think that the players, I engage enough with the players and the coaches that they know that I'm there for them, and when they notice, hey, the food's not great, or something else. If you saw, like, for example, there's only like one cold plunge, right? So it's like,
oh my
are you
gosh.
kidding me?
Right.
It turns out, by the way, that because I cold plunge. The normal cold plunge costs about $6,000. You have to get a special cold plunge because everyone's so big.
Yeah.
So
right.
So it's more expensive. But I said, go get it. Like, Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Really. He just said that he spent, between fixing up the facility in Ashburn and the stadium, $125 million. Put that into perspective. The Dallas Cowboys sold in 1989 to Jerry Jones for something like $180 million for the whole team. and And Josh Harris just spent that kind of money to fix up the mess that Dan Snyder left behind, and telling them, hey, is it okay if we buy cold? Yeah, go buy some cold tubs there. And this is part of the Don Van Natta, Seth Wickersham story that I think was really instrumental in pushing Dan Snyder out the door. Not that he wasn't under a lot of pressure anyway with the investigation of the toxic culture and the way that he had screwed over his partners. I mean, the walls were closing in on him. But one of the things they reported in this story was that the wives of the players all sit in the same section of what is now Northwest Stadium. And they have little kids, some of them, some of them in their late 20s, early 30s. They have either toddlers or kids still in diapers. And one of the wives, not identified, went to Tanya Snyder, who, again, had become co-owner of the team when Snyder was trying to hang on. He thought, man, if I get suspended for a year, we'll just have Tanya run the team. And so one of the wives went to her and said, can we get a changing station inside the bathroom closest to where we sit? And Tanya Snyder said, we're going to get a new stadium anyway. She said, it's like $5,000. I'll pay for it. That's the kind of chintziness that they ran the team with. Never mind, Snyder, especially in the early days, paying incredibly stupid sums of money for players who weren't that good. When it came to the other stuff, he was very chintzy and stupid and short-sighted. And as Harris said, when you're trying to attract free agents, that matters. You got to have a first-class facility, not one that got an F- from the players in their first year of evaluation. They were last in the league in player evaluations after the 2023 season, and now they're up to 11 in the league. And that's what paying attention to the things that they want, things that are important means, and being willing to spend the money, as he said, $125 million between making the stadium inhabitable and making Ashburn a place that players can feel good about going to and working out in. This is the second to last part of the conversation, and this is something that Dan Snyder, I don't think, bargained on when he came in as the owner at 34, wasn't prepared to do it, doesn't have the personality to handle this. And Harris is not, he ain't Jerry Jones, that's for sure. That's not the way he rolls. And, until he bought the team around here anyway, maybe in Philadelphia and in New Jersey, he was known. But, he was not a public person. Now that he's the owner of the team, especially here in Washington, he's a public figure. And this is how he explains how he kind of dealt with that as that evolved as he became an owner of various teams.
I think that you have to embrace, if you want to do this as the managing owner, as the control owner, you need to embrace the fact that you're now a public figure, and that comes with all of the issues that you might think that Alex has lived with. But people come up to you, people interrupt you and want to talk about the team, good and bad. Mm-hmm. Obviously pretty happy people in Washington, and we less happy in other locations this particular year. And you have to be, even signing autographs. And then, there's, you all of a sudden, you in some cases need security when you go into enemy territory, maybe. And then, everything you do plays out on the front page, in the paper, right? So you have to be righteous in your behavior. So if you're not prepared to be righteous in your behavior and do things that the people can relate to on the front page of the paper, then you probably shouldn't do it. And there's no way around it. And I didn't really realize what I was signing up for, honestly. I'd never been through it like Alex. And Alex certainly, could probably write 3 books on this subject.
Unfortunately.
But, and then it starts to, your family starts to get known. I mean, all that stuff. But I'd say that just comes with it. And for good or for bad. And we own clubs, own teams in really tough cities. Like Philly fans are amazing. They care, but they're, they take no prisoners, right? And they hold us accountable.
Yeah.
And certainly when the Commanders played the Eagles in the NFC Championship, I tried to explain to everyone that, if you just grew up in South Philly, I understand why you're all about Philly sports. But I grew up in Washington and Philly. My mom was from Philly. My grandmother's from Philly. But I grew up in Washington. But then I went to Penn when I was 17, and I saw these two teams, and I love these two teams. And so I tried to explain myself, and I'd say 97% of the fans got it. But there's going to be some fans that just because of that, and I understand that, right? And that's just something that I have to live with. But today, like, there are a lot of people, increasingly, these are big businesses, and more you're going to see people owning, whether it's the Cronkies or Fenway Sports, or, you're going to see people owning teams in different cities, certainly the Glazers. So this isn't a unique thing, but certainly in a city like Philly, which really cares about sports, and I respect, it definitely is something I have to manage.
Last thing, the wrap up with Josh Harris as he appeared on the Deal podcast, co-hosted by Alex Rodriguez and Jason Kelly, former business reporter with Bloomberg. This is what they call rapid fire, a series of questions to wrap up the conversation.
What's one word to describe your deal making style?
Flexible.
What's more important to you in a deal, your gut or data?
Data.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
David Blitzer.
What's the best piece of advice you've received on deal making or business?
You can't do a good deal with a bad person.
What's the worst advice you've been given?
If you pay a low enough price, you can make it work.
What's Josh Harris's hype song before you go into a big meeting or negotiation?
Ooh, Coldplay.
Ooh, I like that.
Good. What's one word to describe this past season for the Commanders?
Joyous.
This is a tough one, Josh. If you can only watch one sport for the rest of your life, which one is it?
I can't pick one kid. I can't pick one sport.
All right. We'll give you a pass on that one because you're involved in way too many sports.
Too many kids. Tricky.
All right. Well, this one is going to be similarly tough. I feel another pass coming on. What team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
I like all of our teams to win championships. I mean, honestly, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
All of them. And last question. If someone wanted to have a career like Josh Harris, what advice would you give them?
Just, bring it. Do something that you love, and it's not a straight line. Keep going. Life's going to serve a lot of curveballs. You may miss a few, but, have a vision in your mind. Shoot high, and if you miss a little bit, you're still going to be better off than you were before.
That's Josh Harris on the Deal podcast. I really like that one. You can't do a good deal with a bad person. And for 24 years, this team was owned by a bad person. And it was a bad deal for the fan base, from the suing the grandmother who couldn't pay off on her club seats, from closing off Bright Seat Road so people couldn't park at the mall across the street and walk in, from gouging on parking, from not taking care of a stadium where sewage was leaking on fans sitting in the stands, or railings were collapsing as we're trying to get Jalen Hurts' autograph, and just the way that he broke the team. He had a team that for years and years was number one in revenue in the NFL, more than the Dallas Cowboys. And when they took over, I believe they were like 28 or 29 in the league. I mean, that's inconceivable for a market the size of Washington and the heritage of the football team, which went to 4 Super Bowls over 9 years in the 80s and the early 90s. So, that is, I think, so important. That is a great phrase. You can't make a good deal with a bad person. And we had a bad person for a long time. I'm not saying that Josh Harris is the greatest of all time, but with a few simple things, like he said, when you own a team, you hire a really good general manager who hires a good coach, and then you hire a team president and let them do their job. Yeah, that's how you get a team that goes from 4 wins to the NFC Championship game with a little bit of good fortune, like a Jaden Daniels being available at number 2 in the draft. Anyway, 40 years ago today, Larry King Live started on CNN. It ran on CNN from this day in 85 to December 16th of 2010. And the media world was entirely different in 1985. I mean, these were the early days of cable TV. I think HBO started in 1973, but cable really didn't become, a thing nationwide, I should say, probably until the early 80s. ESPN got off the ground in 1979. I remember when we started WFAN in 87, there was some question as to their long-term viability, whether that was actually going to last. And the big difference for them was getting the NFL. They got half of the Sunday night package in the early days, and that kind of, really got them off the ground. But, CNN started in 1980. It was groundbreaking. Wow, 24 hours a day, national news. And they added various shows. And Larry King, who also had done something previously that was kind of groundbreaking. There had been, I think, national radio shows before, but nothing that really caught on the way the Larry King Show did when it became an overnight show on Mutual Radio in 1978. I remember working in Texas, Port Arthur, Texas. I think we were one of the original stations. We started that station in January of 78. We were among the first stations that had Larry King overnight. And so the radio show became so popular in the 7 years that Ted Turner took notice and said, well, let's kind of turn this into a television show. It was a television show that operated much like a radio show because they took calls, had big guests on, and if you were a big guest selling a book or selling promoting a movie or whatever it was, you went on Larry King because there weren't other outlets like this. So this is from the first year. This is Larry King with Don Rickles. His first guest for trivia purposes was Mario Cuomo. Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York at the time, and he and Larry King had been friends growing up in Brooklyn together. So he had one of his boyhood pals on the first show on this day in 1985. But later in the year, he had Don Rickles on, who I'm sure was promoting some type of tour, maybe in Vegas. And Larry was hosting the show from Washington, and it led to a few chuckles.
Phoenix, Arizona. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, this is Ellis Leibowitz in Phoenix, Arizona. How you doing?
How you doing, Lee? How you doing? Ellis Leibowitz. Do you know this man, Don?
No, but it sounds like we want to get in touch with each other. Don, big question. With all the experiences you've had in your private shows, have you ever had one where you felt you went a little too far and had some reverberations, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What kind of ramifications of it?
No,
I'm listening to your answer.
To be very I hope so, Mr. Leibowitz. That's why I asked the question.
It would be murder if you hung up and let me talk to a wall.
I won't hang up.
Mr. Leibowitz gives $300 anonymous and will listen to my response. Thank you, Mr. Leibowitz. We'll now go on with the Talmud Torah prayers and continue on with the services. I want to say, if Larry will shut up and let me answer this man. To be very honest, Mr. Leibowitz, it's starting to sound like a Jewish judge. I sentence you to 35 years in prison. No, I want to say, Mr. Leibowitz, I really have never on the stage, anything I've ever done, I've never taken back, in the sense that when I stand out there, you have to believe in what you do. If for one moment you say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, you're a fool. As an entertainer, this is in my own opinion and what I do. When I'm out there, I'm doing my best to make people laugh, and I'm doing with all earnesty. I'm not out there to hurt somebody. If it comes off that way, I'm sorry in my heart, but I never take it back. In other words, I perform with my soul and with my honesty, and I think that's what makes me go. Amen.
Larry King and Don Rickles. 1985, not too much longer after that, he moved to Los Angeles and then stayed there. I think he stayed there till he passed away. And the show ended on June 29th announced on June 29th of 2010 that he was ending the show, and it ended in December of that year. He was replaced by Piers Morgan Tonight. That didn't last. It started January of 2011, done in 2014. And they've tried a couple of different hosts over the years in this type of format, but it was it was created for Larry, and he had an old time radio style microphone on the desk. I don't even know if it worked. They probably had the lavalier microphones that they clipped to the lapel and things like that. And he never wore a suit. He would always wear suspenders, or sometimes he'd wear a sweater vest. But that was his signature. And it just worked for a long time. Would it work today? Probably not. But at the time, there just weren't those all those shows that we have now. You know, CNN has news where they're always interviewing newsmakers, and they're shorter interviews. To have somebody on for an hour, and Larry was really good at this. And he was also famous for this. He wouldn't read the book because he wanted to be, as he said, as curious as the audience. He was good at asking questions, and he did that for all those years. And it all started on this day. Not really started, because the radio show had started 7 years before, but it started on television, Larry King Live, on this day in 1985. The radio show, which he did together, he kept the radio show going, even though I guess he was sort of hedging on this if this didn't work out. But the radio show and the TV show continued together. I guess he would get off TV, was on at 8 o'clock, and then prepare for the radio, and the radio was on overnight for like 3 hours or something like that, and then they repeated it. He did that till 1994, so 9 years of doing both the radio and TV show. David Brenner took it over. He lasted 2 years. You know, it just shows you how those things work. Like, it worked for Larry. You just can't throw somebody else in there and try and create Larry King. Jim Bohannon, who was a longtime radio guy, was doing an overnight show on Mutual until he passed away a couple of years ago, but I don't know if they've got anybody doing it anymore like that. And then finally this. I have talked about living to 100. I don't know if I'll live to 100. My father made it to 94. My mother-in-law, though, is 95, and she is an identical twin, and both she and her identical twin sister are doing well, and they have an older sister who I believe just turned 99, if I'm not mistaken. And these twins, my mother-in-law and her sister, I think could make 100. We've just had in England a pair of identical twins celebrate their 100th birthday. Last name is Casey. That's Bill and Jack. They celebrated with cake, drinks, and friends at their retirement home. Bill is the oldest of the twins by 10 minutes. He enjoys an artistic life, having taken up painting in retirement, and makes time for his health with 20 minutes of daily exercise. And if you read about longevity, that is the key. Exercise. That's the number one thing. Heredity would be number one, but exercise would help. Reflecting on his 100 years, he says the computer is the most important invention that he's seen in his lifetime, with its amazing possibilities. I think I would agree with that, and my lifetime has been shorter than his. He's originally from, the twins are originally from Wadsworth, which is south of London. They joined the Army in 1945 as members of the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and they both raise families, and, together they are in the retirement home at the age of 100. So mazel tov to Bill and Jack Casey from England, who celebrate a birthday together. That's a remarkable story, because the chances of anyone living to be 100 are very slim. They're, like Betty White made it to 99. There have been others that are on the doorstep and don't quite make it. But these guys crossed over to the age of 100, and looks like they're going strong, and as are my mother-in-law and her sister. So maybe they both make it to 100 as well. Anyway, that's it for me. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.